Hi everybody, this is the original Josh, back again with Kranzle USA Pressure Washer Perfection. And today we have diagnosed that we need to replace our pressure switch because it is either causing the machine to not run or some other electrical malfunction. So we are going to replace the entire housing, and then also in a separate video we're going to do the micro switch by itself, and we're going to show you that on a separate screen so it's easier to see all the details of that. So we're going to start with our brand new micro switch. We've got the entire assembly. We'll start by taking our capacitor and moving it to the unloader side of the housing so it's entirely out of the way of the process. I like to disconnect the terminal of the pressure switch from the on-off switch and then disconnect it from our terminal strip. Now, as you'll see, both on the one that we're removing as well as the new micro switch housing, that terminal ends are already installed onto the wire, so we don't have to worry about putting any new connectors on. We will, however, have to reuse this terminal cover. So in order to remove that, you're going to take your little flat screwdriver or a little O-ring pick. A little straight pick works good as well. And stick it into the housing. And you're going to reach up and press in the little clip. It's kind of hard to see. You might need to get somebody with some good eyes. But once you get that clip pressed, you can start to push the terminal cover right off the terminal. And there we have the terminal cover. So we're going to set this aside, don't lose it. So now we have our pressure switch assembly disconnected from the switch and the terminal strip. We can loosen up our cable connector, slide that down, and then pull through our wire. Now you'll notice out with the wire also came the cable gland as well as the nut for the cable connector. Now that we have the wire disconnected from the enclosure, we can remove the micro switch housing. So we'll use our flat tip screwdriver to remove our two housing screws. Now we can pop off the entire micro switch housing. You'll notice down inside the housing, there's a little O-ring. That's what seals against the control piston that sticks out. In a separate video, we'll go over exactly how the two of those interact with one another. So now we've got our new pressure switch assembly. We have to make sure that order of operations is important here, guys. You want to make sure that you get your gland nut on there first, and you also want to make sure it's facing the right direction, which is opposite of the gland nut on the other end. So put it on all the way. And don't forget our gland. Slide that down the wire. So before we put our wires into our cable connector, it's helpful to take a marker or some plastic implement to press out the compression sleeve of the cable connector. There's little teeth in there, bite into the gland, but if they're too tight, the gland won't go back into it. We slip our wires in one at a time, and you can actually maybe get them in both at once. Feed it through. Now it's a little bit tricky to get this gland worked in there. I work it in the bottom first, then get it started. Now I'll put the housing on the side of the pump, right on the control piston, and install one of my screws just to hold it in place. This will give me a chance to reconnect my wires and make some final adjustments to the cable going from the assembly to the housing so that we can get this nice and straight. So here comes the fun part. We take our terminal cover and put it back onto the new terminal and get that satisfying little click. Reinstall your terminal onto your on-off switch, and then the blue wire into the terminal strip. On this particular model, the 1622, it's opposite of the brown wire, but it should be the only terminal open on the terminal strip. Once you install it, give it a little tug, make sure it's snug. Now we've got the gland right about where we want. Install the second screw into our housing. Tighten them down almost all the way. Get it straight as you like. Pull out your level. All right, guys. So now we'll get this where it's sitting in a comfortable spot. Now you can use the wire to help wiggle that gland the rest of the way in, where it's going to bite nice and even. And now tighten down your gland nut. Snug that up a little bit with your channel locks. One of the few places that you're allowed to use this tool on your pressure washer. And then get it nice and straight. I like to make the hexes line up. Final snug. Now we'll put Mr. Capacitor back into the electrical enclosure. You also might have noticed at this point that there's a little cradle for the capacitor to lay in. It's got a little bed, so slip it in there. Make sure your wires are all nice and away from any of the plastic edges inside the housing. When you go to put your cover on, it should sit pretty comfortably on top without having to push. If there's some wire that's getting pinched, you want to correct that before you cover on so that it doesn't get pinched or possibly cut by, hanging over the edge of the housing. So we reinstall our cover. We'll reinstall our 4 screws into the housing, and now we are ready to test. If you have any questions regarding this stuff that we haven't gone over, once again, leave some comments below or call our office. As always, this is the original Josh with Kranzle USA, your source for pressure washer perfection.
Kranzle USA, pressure washer perfection.